Good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to do a different video than my NeoVim guide, and this is about how I think AI is. This is something I've been wanting to talk on for a while, but I think AI is a detriment to society. Probably going to cause a lot of issues, and I'll tell you exactly what those reasons are. I'll just put it in list format. So this is off just the top of my head. I can research further and find probably more reasons why it's detrimental. But first, let me go ahead and start by saying the AI itself, where we're able to kind of use it as a more sophisticated autocomplete. I don't think there's really an issue with that, just in integrating it into the workplace. It's something that I use at my workplace. So when I want to, instead of kind of Google searching, so it's effectively like a Google search and being able to sift through answers and then have that being able to kind of identify what's needed using that. So that was the old way of going about it. Now you use AI, you still validate what's given to you, but now you get an explanation. Sometimes it hallucinates, but it generally can help you as long as you're giving it snippets or kind of basic logic. And there's not to say that it won't improve, but I think it is a more sophisticated autocomplete, and it can be useful. And I can talk about reasons why, in cases where it's not as useful, and maybe you have to use tactics to make it better. So providing better prompting or providing like specific test cases and things like that. But that's not what I really want to focus on. Not necessarily the AI itself, but more so the domain of AI, what issues it's causing for people in general. So let me start off by saying one is that there's environmental issues. So that's just right easy off the bat to hit. And I'll go ahead and list them here. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. Yeah, just like that. Okay, so one of the things is environmental factors. And there's a few environmental factors that we can consider. One of them is going to be noise pollution. So if you go and look up any kind of news channel, you could see what's AI noise pollution, where you go outside of the data center, it's making these loud noises. That causes issue for the wildlife, that causes issue for your sleep, that just is generally not just an annoyance, but a health issue. So that's one. Maybe not as, how should I say, as pressing, I would say, but it's still, for the people who are around those communities, they can definitely feel it. The next part is the actual water pollution. This one's more significant because for the region, for the towns nearby, I just saw a special where a nearby town, I think it was in Kentucky, and the water, once they installed the data center and they had it up and running, the water went from regular water that you would normally see, so clear water, to like mud, essentially like muddy water. So it's not like dirt all up in it. I don't know what other contaminants were in it, but it looked pretty dirty. That's significant because those towns, you have to go out and go further to purchase bottled water. You can't drink water nearby. If there's any children, you're probably exposing them to carcinogens, which are cancer-causing agents. So a lot of danger in terms of endangering the public that are near the data centers. And as we have AI, it requires, so there's different forms of AI or different uses. One is going to be text input, text output. That tends to be less resource intensive than images. Images are much more resource intensive. So that's where you have to rely more on the GPUs. In both cases, you're using GPUs, but you're using a lot more of the power. And then in the third case, it's like video generation. Video generation being, sequence of images. So that one's really, really, how should I say, resource intensive. So both on CPU, the GPU, the amount of electricity needed. So that's why it necessitates the need, or necessitates more data centers having to be created. So from all your cloud providers, just because in order to have these video generations, like you see, I just saw like Adobe Firefly have video generation with AI. In order to have that, you need data centers, and otherwise there's insufficient for insufficient supply for the increased demand of more people kind of wanting these features. So with that said, water pollution is going to be more prevalent. The next part is the electricity costs. So the grid within the United States is pretty weak in the sense that I used to look into a company called CleanSpark that would advocate going into microgrids. The reason being is that I think one of their quotes was that the grid could be taken down with like there's like a few weak points that if they were taken down, they could potentially take down the grid for the United States. So that's one of the reasons why they advocated for the microgrid. Makes sense. With that said, it's very fragile. Another good example is, I believe it was in Texas, whenever it gets really cold. I don't know if it's Texas or Arizona. It gets really cold, the power goes out. And I remember a few years ago someone died, or people have died because they didn't have heat. It was really cold. Generally elderly people, right? And they pass away because they don't have the heat, they don't have the resources to, the physical ability to get firewood, and they end up freezing to death. But with that said, once again, electricity is needed more to power these data centers. So what happens as a result? Well, the cities nearby, they end up having to, well, the consumption of electricity goes up. And so let's say originally you're paying, I don't know, let's just say hypothetically 20 cents per kilowatt hour. But because there's now a data center and the electricity costs went up, now, or the electricity usage went up, now the electricity costs went up. So now that same power plant's not charging you 20 cents, now it's charging you 40 cents, 60 cents, maybe multiples of what you were paying before. And once again, you could search up on the news, easily verifiable. But electricity costs, I've seen in one really kind of ridiculous instance, households that were paying, I think it was $800, hundreds and hundreds of dollars of electricity costs. They were saying they were paying more for their electricity costs than rent. That's just insane to me. And that's a reality for some people because of the data centers. So electricity costs is an issue. The other part is essentially, they call it subsidizing, but it's essentially welfare. So I just want to, I think people will connect to it better, but it's welfare for data centers. And so what do I mean by that? Generally speaking, cities will bid. They'll make bids to these large companies. And Kevin O'Leary was talking about it because he gave a really reprehensible response, which was, why should data centers be subsidized by taxpayers? Essentially, why are cities, why are states paying for these data centers to be funded if they're privately owned? And so the profits are private, the costs or the expenses are shared, essentially what's happening. So you're paying for the cost, but you're not getting the profits. And that is a reality. And he was asked, why is this happening? And his response was, and not exactly a quote, but it's like, if they don't want to bid, they don't have to bid. Essentially, they don't want this built in their city, they don't have to. So pretty, I don't know how to say, pretty crass response where just didn't seem like he really cared about the issue. It was just like, it's not my problem. But with that said, what happens is generally states or cities will bid on companies building their, let's say, their data centers or their distribution centers, their companies within that particular region. So let's say city ABC wants company DEF to build their distribution center, their data center there. So they'll say, okay, what we'll do is we won't charge you taxes, or we'll pay for your electricity cost. And that's what's happening here. We'll pay for your electricity cost. The taxpayer will pay for your electricity costs, and you'll get free electricity for X amount of years, or you'll get lower cost. And that's a benefit for the company, not for the taxpayers. And the promise is, they said, okay, now when we're here, we're going to get lots of jobs for the community. Shouldn't be an issue. The problem is, then you get workers that are outsourced not from that community, but from other communities. So let's say like data engineers or anyone else who's working on it. Those may not be coming from that community, but from further out. Even if you move there, let's say once the job is done, then you get to move out. Or let's say if you are part of the community and you're part of the construction crew, a painter and so forth, you might have a job while it's being built. But then once it's built, generally for maintenance, it's much, much lower. So yes, there's always the promise of X amount of thousands of jobs initially, and then the layoffs. And we can see that every day here on the news. Big companies constantly laying off employees and saying like, oh, look what a good thing this is because we're saving money by laying off all these people. So they get you to to build the data center by saying we're going to get you jobs, and then afterwards they say no, we're gonna lay off, and that's the good part. So that's the welfare that data centers are given. I don't know if I should have put that in environmental factors, but this is just data centers related. Maybe I should put that as more instead of electricity costs, let's call this let's say societal issue. So yeah, so we're subsidizing or we're giving welfare to these data centers. Next part is, as I mentioned, layoffs. So these not only come after the data center, just related to the particular data centers that are being built, and then for maintenance it's much lower. Also layoffs. You'll notice that big companies, the promise is, as we're able to automate these jobs, we can lay off our staff and you'll save money. Now, whether that's true, I don't think so. Just because we've seen cases of that happening. So two reasons. One, generally companies wanted to lay off people, but to spin it off in a positive light, one way you could do is you could say, look how good it is. AI was able to automate it, even if it wasn't, and then you could put a positive spin on the layoff to shareholders. The second reason is we've seen layoffs happen, AI kind of take a hold, and then you have now exploits happening where a lot of hacks are happening as a result, just because the code that's getting distributed has more bugs in it, because you're producing more and with more bugs. So the amount of bugs isn't, I think maybe, I forget if I saw an article on it that was like 20% more likely to have a bug, but because you're shipping a lot more code that's not being reviewed, well, that's the 20%, but you're shipping a lot more lines of code, and that's more bugs that are available for exploits, and there you get the hacks. Additionally, in terms of automation, just Amazon, I think not a month or two ago, in one of their regions, it was like they deleted their prod database. So their whole site was down for about 13 hours when they needed to restore their environment. And the solution was get a person to review it. So that'll help out. So going back to people instead of AI automation. But anyways, the layoffs that I wanted to talk about was, the idea is eventually if things get good enough, then you could lay off people. And that's bad for society because, well, then there's already a decreasing middle class. There's already a high percentage of increasing rich class that owns more and more of the, how should I say, of the nation's resources. So actual goods like land, like the actual producing farmland, housing, the ability to access services just because prices go up, so like healthcare and so forth. So a lot of these, buying hospitals, so that, and increasing costs on hospitals, so that now if you want to go get insurance, it's a lot more costly. But anyways, back to layoffs. The whole idea is, if we do lay off a lot of people, then we get a much bigger lower class. We get a much greater wealthier class, and the distribution of the flow of cash isn't really flowing as it should. So generally people like it, or the economy works when money is flowing. So people are buying cars, buying homes, taking out loans and so forth. And essentially the circulation of money, as long as it keeps going, then it keeps the society running, and people are able to transact that for goods and services. That's just basic economics. What happens when people have less money, right? They're laid off and they don't have any means or any resources. They're not able to transact, right? They're not able to purchase now this shop owner's fruits and vegetables or groceries. They're not able to purchase the new phone. They're not able to purchase the house. And so the circulation of money starts to decrease. And then as a result, you don't really have businesses, except for the large businesses, of course, like large companies, but you don't really have the small businesses because they can't thrive because there's not really any customers. And you can see that in a lot of other societies where there's not really any money or not any jobs. You can't really open up a business because you can't even get a loan. And if you do get a loan and you build up your business, who's going to purchase your goods? No one else has money. So it's just the inertia slows down. And when that happens, the economy goes down. That's the reason why during COVID, when everything was shutting down, there was such a big push for the PPP loans, or loans, money to go into circulation, because economists knew, the government knew, if you don't help subsidize so that the circulation continues, businesses shut down and they don't go back, they don't reopen. It's very difficult because they lost that inertia. They close. It's difficult to open up back up because the shops hasn't been maintained. There's a lot of additional costs, and so it causes a lot of issues. So that's what we would see here in this case. If, as we're seeing more layoffs, less circulation, less people have money, one solution to that is UBI, or Universal Basic Income. It's essentially free money, and I don't know if I would call it as free money necessarily, because there's profits, and the idea is if there's going to be profits, then that should be shared with the community that brought about those profits. So a good example of that is the welfare that's provided to the data centers for the electricity costs. If you're helping with the expenses for that electricity and helping them get off the ground, then the profits that they receive, that data center, a portion of it should go to the community that did fund it or invested in it. Good example of that is in Alaska. There's a lot of drilling of oil, and as a result, Alaskans, I believe, they get some stipend, or they get some money back from the companies that are drilling and getting that oil, and so that's kind of shared profit. So that's kind of like a universal basic income, but not necessarily for the nation, but just for one state. So that's already happening there. So that's the idea, that as companies become more profitable due to the advent, let's say, of AI, then the idea is you would subsidize the cost for people so that the economy could keep going. Now, the likelihood is low. So this is very low likelihood, just because the general idea is, and I mean, you could you can ask yourself in society if this makes sense, but the general consensus is if rich people get tax breaks, if rich people get more money, that's a good thing. And that's what we saw with our recent tax breaks. When poor people get money for not doing anything, then that's a bad thing. That's not good. So UBI would be seen as a bad thing. So it's just, I don't know why that double standard is there, but it is. It's very strange to me. The next part that I wanted to discuss, let's see. So I've talked about data centers, layoffs, and these are just off the top of my head. There's a lot more reasons why AI is bad, by proxy of the data centers and by proxy of layoffs, subsidization of these large companies. Let's see. I had a few more reasons. Let's see. Another one is, let's call it the profits. So generally speaking, and you can be the judge of this one, is that recently, and it could be argued that this is in many cases, is that as there is an increase in profits, let's say things get more efficient, technology gets better, let's say technological improvements, I can't think, it's very difficult for me to think of many cases. I can think of some cases, I can't think of many cases where it's benefited society. So because as there has been technological improvements, as things have gotten better, recently, I haven't seen it help the bottom line for the average person. A good example is before, cars used to be very expensive when the Model T came out. And then afterwards, due to the Industrial Revolution and being able to mass produce them more efficiently, cars became more readily available to people. Same thing could be said about computers and phones, right? So all of this technology back then, it was only for people with a lot of money, and now it's publicly accessible for the most part. So anyone can get, like, for the most part, anyone can get a phone in many cases, or let's say like a refrigerator, perhaps, a computer, things like that. So there is technology that became, how should I say, because of technological advances that became more affordable or less costly. But in recent times, I could really see how inflation significantly outpacing the any benefits, or it just going straight as net profit to the companies. So even if there were any savings, those aren't passed to the consumers; those are passed straight to the company. Or inflation just outpaces the cost, and we end up paying more regardless, even if things get better. I'll give you a good example of that. So vehicles, cars. How much have you seen cars go up in the past few years since let's say COVID? How much have you seen cars go up? So car payments used to be like a few $100, so like anywhere from $300 to $500 per month, and that was just the car payment, not the insurance, not anything else like the registration, nothing like that. Just the car payment used to be $300 to $500. Now car payments are anywhere from $500 to, I've seen as high as almost $2,000. And I've also seen, it used to be that you would pay off your car in 5 years. Now it's very common to pay off your car in 6, 7 years. The reason being is that if you spread it out over a longer period, you're actually going to pay more in interest, but it slightly reduces your monthly payment. So why are people doing that? Why are people extending it out another 6, 7, 8 years? And it's because prices are going up. Where are the technological advancements? I hear all these technological advancements about EVs, about hybrids. I don't see the cars getting any less expensive. I see them getting more expensive. That's one. The next one as well is you can look at just generally large companies. What they'll do is they'll have net losses. Good example is Uber. Actually, you could do it for almost any of the large tech companies, but just for example, Uber starts off, it's very low cost rides, beats taxis. They gain market share, so they're operating at a loss. They're eating their investors' money. But once they get enough of a market share and people are relying on Uber, what do? They jack up prices. And actually, even more recently, due to AI and also metadata, what they can do is they can check if your battery is low on your phone, and if your battery is low, then they can do they can upcharge you, so that instead of paying, let's say, like $20 a ride, now you're paying $30 a ride. Hypothetically, I don't know the exact figures, but you're going to get charged more because your battery is low. Or let's say it's a particular date and time, so like it's the nighttime, and let's say they know you're stranded. In a sense, from the metadata, they can kind of make see if. Oh no, actually no. Here's another one. Sorry, because I know this one off the top of my head. If you're low battery, that's one they'll charge you more. If you've checked the ride and then you go and check it again. So if like in your cookies, or not necessarily cookies, but just kind of information, session information where they can see how often you've looked at it, kind of like a plane ticket, they'll charge you more as well. So that's another way that they can use that metadata, or and in combination with AI to charge you more. So this is all going back to the idea of just because there are technological improvements doesn't mean that those savings, and let's say it leads to savings, it doesn't mean those savings are passed on to you. Those savings could be passed on to the shareholders instead of the consumers, and that's what we're seeing. The reason I bring that up is because I also see that with healthcare. Let me know your thoughts, and actually feel free to comment if your healthcare has gotten cheaper as a result of technological improvements. Has your healthcare decreased in cost anytime within the past few years, 10 years, 20 years? Has it gone down? I suspect not. And you would say, look how many advancements have been in medical science. There's more efficient procedures. We know a lot more. We have better tools and so forth. Shouldn't this be cheaper? No. So, and this is just going back to the idea of just because we have the ability to create potentially better tools and have increased savings, we have the potential to expand the technology to more people, or more care to more people and so forth. Doesn't mean we will. And that's something that you see very obviously in the cost of cars, the cost of travel, the cost of healthcare. So I could put travel, cars, and just insurance using AI to be able to deny coverages, and being able to check more loopholes or being able to check more conditions to see, actually, is there one term you didn't exactly meet and now we can deny coverage, or just straight up denying you and knowing that it's more likely that if you get denied and if you appeal, or you're less likely to appeal, and so in the long run they'll be saving money. So that's all statistical analysis and AI driven as well. So it's pretty bad for people again. This isn't necessarily so AI, I think of it as, once again, sophisticated autocomplete. I don't see that as the issue. I see the way it's being approached as the issue. Just rapid expansion, causing the noise pollution, causing the water pollution, or taxpayers having to subsidize the electricity costs, or costs in other ways, the layoffs. All of this is the approach to it. It doesn't have to be like this, but it is like this, and that's the reality of it. And that's what causes issues. So it's not about that the tool is bad, it's the approach to it is bad. And let's take a look. What are some other things that I can think of why it's bad? Oh yeah. So quality. So I think AI is definitely useful for helping to better identify available options. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm working at my job and I see an error code, and one thing I can do is I can investigate on my own and just kind of just read it and see, okay, what do I think it is? But I can also use AI to plug that error in without any identifiable information, but just plug it in and see, okay, does it lead me to what are some suspected causes? Maybe it lists out 5 suspected causes. I only knew maybe 2 of them, and now I'm able to go down that list. And if it wasn't those 2 that I was aware of, it helps me identify other ones that maybe were the answer. So it's useful in that way. It's also useful, once again, for code snippets in my job. Again, if I'm looking for a particular syntax, or maybe I'm trying to identify if there's a more optimal way to do it. Yeah, I could chat with it. I can validate it if it's the right approach. That's not bad. But the way that the tool is being recommended, and you can see on how it's being marketed, the tools, is that you don't need to know much. So you can know very little to almost nothing, to pretty much nothing, and then you can build anything. That's the premise, right? That's what's being marketed. You could see that on all the commercials, pretty much like, oh yeah, I used to think like this wasn't for me, and now with AI, I don't even have to know anything. I can go ahead and just do no code solutions, or I don't need to know about accounting. Like I can just do these things on my own, or really any skill. And that's not really the truth. The truth is, while you can build something that potentially runs, it's not going to be if you're doing it in this approach, it's not anywhere. So it's not best practice. And why do we care about whether things are built well or with high quality? It's because if it's not done well, depending on the context, there could be a lot of significant consequences. So I'll give an example. Let's say you build an app and you have some clients. You just ask the AI to code it, make no mistakes, right? And it ends up getting hacked. And you leak your customers' data. Let's say the passwords are in plain text, or let's say it's just writing it with average code from a year ago or 2 years ago, and it doesn't know that there's already some exploits against that approach. So then it's able to leak data. Or maybe the app included AI prompting, and there's a lot of different AI hacks that can happen. So one was like AI Morse code. You can put Morse code in there and prompt it and ask it to leak credentials. Just through prompting, you can ask it to leak credentials. There's supply chain attacks now that are more prevalent because of AI. So a lot of different ways that it can get hacked. And generally, getting hacked and having your client's data hacked is not something most people want. That's I think that's a pretty common opinion. Something else is, let's say you do have an application and it's used by consumers that consumers trust that it's built well, and then it just breaks frequently. A good example of this is GitHub. GitHub's very, very widely adopted company by developers, but right now, or at least within the past few months, it's been going down repeatedly. And actually, that's not specific to GitHub, so I don't want to just call out one company, but several companies, Amazon included, and so forth. They have had their sites going down more regularly. There used to be a line about, or a concept called availability, availability, such that you wanted to be up 99.999, and there were X amount of nines that you could go up to, and that would be a judgment of the quality of your product. Whereas now it's it's just kind of expected that outages will happen. That's the expectations have been lowered, so that maybe your website's or maybe your service is running, maybe it's not, and that's just the quality that can be found as a result of some of these issues, whether it's hacks, whether it's bugs that were unintentionally added, and as the logic was run, it kind of failed at some point. So this goes back to the quality, and that's because when we don't have people, and this is not to say that bugs can't happen when developers are writing code. That's not to say that can't happen. It's just that when it's marketed in a way that you push speed over quality, quality suffers. This is just a fact. And so there is a way to approach it where you can still increase the speed. So you can have it do kind of more trivial jobs and increase the speed, but you keep code quality high by still having a good review process, by still being, how should I say, selective about your approach, or intentional about your review. And that could help keep code quality high. So once again, it's not the tool that's necessarily bad, it's the way that it's being approached. And as a catch-all, unfortunately, this, because of how AI is being approached generally in the market, these are the consequences. What else about quality? I would say another part is And this is a more this is a question. This is a comment about training AI. So AI needs to be trained in order for it to improve. The problem is is that when content is AI driven, so the blogs are AI driven. So your blog was written by AI, your website was written by AI, your essays are written by AI, your thoughts, right, review on a movie is written by AI. All of this is written by AI. It's a statistical model. So if you give it the AI data and it's fed more AI data, so trained on AI data, it's going to repeat that level of quality. And so if you give it low quality, let's say AI data for the most part, it's going to stay low quality. So you have to be very intentional about what you're feeding it. And I know some companies are even paying people to perform tasks so that they can keep high quality content going in. And I think that's a smart idea. But it used to be that on the web, you would find all this free content. Actually, there's some legal debates about that because I know just AI models in general, or the companies that were training these AI models are lawsuits because they just took the works of thousands upon thousands of books that they didn't get the rights for, and music and so forth that they trained it on. But anyways, but there used to be really good content made by humans, right? That's becoming less prevalent because now it's going to be AI driven. And so that's a bit of an issue. So quality goes down even for the inputs to the AI. What was another part I wanted to talk about? Environmental factors. Yes. Okay. And then profits. This kind of leads back to profits, but we'll go back to, let's call it experience and vendor locking. So I think some people might know where I'm going with this, but experience and vendor locking. What do I mean by this? So there's a push for, once again, speed over quality. And right now, like in the field, just in general in the job market, there's a desire for speed for production. And in order for that to happen, you need people who are experts within the field to be hired. So there's a lot of need for seniors, effectively. Juniors, not really, for the most part. They're having a very, very difficult time to get their foot in the door. And the reason why this is short-sighted is because right now there's sufficient seniors there are seniors to be able to guide the architectural decisions, to guide the development and the review of these tools. The problem is that you have right now, let's say like mid-level, and senior level staff that are able to guide it. But what happens when they age out? What happens when those people retire, or they have, let's say, increased salaries and they reach sufficient money where they say, I don't want to do this anymore. Eventually, there's a lack of talent, of people replacing those seniors that leave, or mid-level developers that leave, or it doesn't have to be for code, it can be for any industry that's using AI. So what really happens there? Well, that's a problem that hasn't been answered yet. So what do? Things may go fast now, in a sense, and at low quality or a lower quality, but they'll go faster. You'll be able to ship more things. The problem is 10 years, 15 years down the road, who do you have? Where are your seniors now? If they've already retired, what can you do? The people who may have started now, let's say you did get some beginners, some juniors, let me say, will they really develop the experience needed to become seniors? So that's the question. AI, the way it's marketed is you don't really have to know anything, you don't have to learn anything in the process, you just are able to develop it as long as you're using this tool, right? It's like a black box. The problem is, if people, especially juniors, if they're focused on speed over quality, just think about it as if you were back in grade school and you didn't take the time to go slower and learn your arithmetic, your multiplication, your division, what if you just went straight to the calculator? So you just wanted to be able to solve the problems. You didn't really care about like actually knowing how to do the math. You just cared about getting the answer. So if someone was telling you 6 times 7, okay, let me plug that in the calculator instead of learning how to do it the right way. Well, you could get fast results from the beginning as long as you teach them how to use a calculator. And then a few years down the line, you take away the calculator, what happens? They don't know what to do, right? So they don't really have those skills. And that's what happens in many cases, because people will not slow down. Sometimes, many times, potentially due to pressures within their company to deliver. So instead of going a bit slower, learning the skills, and also being able to produce, they just need to operate quickly, or else they could potentially lose their job. And that's definitely very real, and that's a difficult position. So this is to say that many juniors may not develop the skills to become actual seniors. They'll be dependent on the AI technology. So there's going to be potential dependency on AI. The reason why this is important is because then you get locked in to your tools. If that junior that over the next 5-10 years was only able to do their accounting or software development job, or God forbid their medical job, so where they're a doctor and they're using AI just to like guide their diagnosis, but hopefully that's not the case. But if they're dependent on those tools, you take it away, they don't have the skills, they become locked in. And so as a result, going back to the Uber, before you were able to use taxis, once Uber got the market share, you were dependent on Uber and Lyft and so forth to give you rides, and taxis weren't really as much of an option anymore, because since they got priced out, they were less, and maybe they were forced to also increase their prices because they had to make up for their operating costs and like lower demand. Anyways, but this is to say, you get locked in the sense that you're dependent on the tools, and now you have to pay for it. And if they up the price, then are you really saving any money? And this goes back to that idea of profits. So let's say tokens do get more affordable. Do we see in today's events AI getting cheaper, or do we see it getting more expensive? You could look at any of the models; they're getting more expensive. The reason being is that as the new models come out, you're limited to much less tokens. It used to be that I don't remember if it was Claude or ChatGPT. One of them had like a $200 month model, where you could use as many tokens as you want, unlimited amount of tokens. And now they changed it to, I believe it was that $200 model. Now it's X amount of tokens, so you're limited now. So it's not unlimited, but it's a limited amount now. And that just means it got more expensive, because it used to be $200 is an infinite amount of tokens. Now if it's a finite amount of tokens, it's more expensive. And that goes for all the plans as well. So there's more sliding windows where you've reached your limit, then you're not able to use it. So really things are getting more expensive. The way I like to say it is you're locked in to a tool, into not necessarily a particular environment, because you could probably switch between the different AI suppliers, but you're locked into a tool, which is the AI itself, and then you have increased costs. So let's say you're running your business, and because on fully AI, because you think, oh yeah, no, the marketing worked, I can make this product now to fix it or to keep it up and running. I don't know how the tool was made. How did I do this? I have no idea. All I know is that AI could do it for me, but now they're going to charge me a lot more to keep doing it, and they locked you in. And that's that's going to be a reality for some people. Let's see. What about? This is quite a bit of issues. These are, like I said, just off the top of my head, and just some of the things that I'm seeing. I know another one. Just generally speaking, surveillance. I don't know if I spelled that right. I want to say I spelled that right. Let me just double check. All right, 2 L's. I knew I spelled it wrong. Okay. So for surveillance, you might have seen at the Super Bowl, which camera was it? Ring, I think. And there's also flock cameras, which are pretty bad, in the sense that you got a lot of surveillance going on. There was like a lost dog, and suddenly everyone's within that community, everyone's doorbell or camera on the doorbell was provisioned so that it was able to search for the dog, and they were able to find it. So I think the idea was that it's like, oh great, there's a dog that we lost and it's found. That's good. The idea is also that your security is not your security. It's the company's security. They own it. They can use it anytime they want. And if it's compromised, if it gets hacked, which we're seeing a lot of hacks, the person who hacked it owns your system as well. And that's a bit of a reality. So mass surveillance, and whether it's being used correctly or not. A good example of that was, I just saw a story recently, I forget what state it was, but some police officers were in trouble because they were looking up people on, I think, the camera systems. I think it was the flock cameras, to find out their locations. And in several of the cases where the police officers were had gotten in trouble, I think it was a few hundred times that the police officer had stalked. I think it was an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife. So it's a few hundred times. So this is, again, to say that there's the capability to do these things, thanks to AI and just more technology out there. And as a result, some things may not be used appropriately, and surveillance itself is going to be commonplace. Or it's already kind of commonplace, but even more so. With respect to surveillance, there's also going to be false positives. And you could look up a number of cases of false positives with AI. Just so many cases of false positives where people are identified to be 100% matches. And so I remember at least one case of this where there was a 100% match that this is the person who was shoplifting or had caused some issue. The app, this is definitely the person. It was not the person. So the app says, yeah, 100% that's the person, AI, and police officers just go ahead and trust it. And it wasn't the person. And person gets locked up in jail. Their livelihood is threatened in the sense that, their job is looking at them like, why are you, why did you do these things? You could lose your job. You're having to spend time in jail. And it's just because AI made a whoopsie. And that's more common now. And so you have to ask yourself, do you want to be put in a position where, you're just walking around and AI says, yeah, that's, you were responsible for some heinous crime, and in reality, you didn't do anything wrong. Do you want to be in that position? Because that's a reality. Let's see. There was another one that I wanted to discuss. I don't know if it was with surveillance. Let's see. Like I said, these are off the top of my head. There's many more reasons why the approach to AI is causing issues for society. And it's very short-sighted, the way it's being approached. That goes for other products as well. It's not just AI, but since this is what's most prevalent, and a lot of resources are going to it, it's very challenging. Let's see. I think that might be my list for now. So as a recap, we have more noise pollution around the cities where the data centers are being built. We have water pollution where it's just like sludge or mud where the data centers are being built. Electricity cost. Oh, here. And these are being targeted in communities that are generally poor for the most part. Reason being is that they won't have, the idea is they won't have the resources to fight back. So you target poor people, you tell them, you build the data center in there, what's the chance that they're going to do anything about it? Not as much. Thankfully, I think they tried to build a data center in Utah. Utah banded together and they were like, we don't want this data center there. So they were able to prevent it from being built there. But generally speaking, this is the idea. You target poor communities. We have to give welfare to these data centers. There's going to be layoffs. Layoffs within the data centers after it's built out, because it's only temporarily that those jobs exist, that the construction personnel are there for the most part. And then afterwards, during maintenance, it goes much lower. Layoffs are also going to happen when AI gets better, if it does get better, and it's able to automate tasks, then that's less of a need for people. And the idea that we're going to combat it with UBI to effectively keep the economy going and have money in circulation so that there's still a strong middle class. Very low given just history. It's not seen as a good idea to give poor people money. Rich people money, yes. Poor people no money, no. In terms of improvements and savings, cost savings, that generally there's a tendency for that to go to net profits as opposed to the consumer. So good example of this is healthcare has gotten more efficient, travel has gotten more efficient, cars have gotten better technology to build your cars, EVs, insurance, now we can use AI to automate these workflows. Has any of these gotten cheaper? Ask yourself if any of these have gotten cheaper. Anything that kind of cost people money? No. The idea of quality is that it's being sold to you as this kind of magic pill where you don't really have to have skills, but you can go ahead and just get anything done, which to some extent can work. It doesn't mean it's a good quality product, and because it doesn't have the best practices, you could have your data leaked, you can have your site down, you can have your product. There was a car rental company actually that used AI, built on AI, so there was like 3 levels of AI on it. The AI just deleted their system, and the person that asked the system, like, why did you ask the AI, why did you do that? And they said something, the AI said something like, oh yeah, I went against my protocols to delete it. In AWS, AI deleted a whole region of Amazon so that people couldn't shop there for a while. And it took about 13 hours to get it back online. Many cases of that as well. More hacks. The fact that AI, there's a challenge as far as getting good quality for training within it, just because if more content is AI driven and it's not high quality, if it's low quality, then it kind of feeds back into the same system and gets worse. The fact that juniors, right now are being neglected for speed, so that they're taking a backseat to speed and production, which leads to an issue in the future of talent replacement, essentially. And the people that do have less experience, who get into the field, are really not learning those skills appropriately. They're kind of becoming dependent on AI, and as such, if you take it away, they don't have the means to perform their work. Just like, once again, if I was teaching a kid how to do arithmetic, but I taught him first with a calculator and I didn't really teach him the skills, and then 5 years down the line I took away the calculator and say like, I can't do this. I don't know actually how to do this. And also, as you become locked in, we know that there's a tendency always for, right now, AI is, I think ChatGPT is operating at a net loss. So it's losing money every day, or every quarter, I should say. That's not going to go on forever. What's going to happen is it's going to pull an Uber or an Amazon, a Facebook, and any company that you can think of. And what it's going to do is it's going to gain market share like it has been right now, and then it's going to increase prices. There's already an increase of prices, and over time increase, so that your $20 a month is not going to be $20 a month. Maybe it's going to be $100, $200 a month. And what are you going to do? You built your whole infrastructure on being able to use the AI, and you have an infrastructure that's hard to maintain because it's low quality. It's not easily maintainable, so you have to put a lot of effort into making it good. And so it's just locked into a tool. There's going to be more surveillance, mass surveillance that's already in place, but more incorrect surveillance as well, where you have people being falsely identified and their livelihood being put at risk. And so these are all ways that AI is negatively going to impact people. It may not be popular to discuss, just because I know that the idea is for how can we use this to improve things, and I do think AI, sophisticated autocomplete, is there's a lot of potential for it, and so I liked it when it came out, and I still like it. I still use it, but I think the approach to it is wrong. And I'm not talking about technological approaches like RAG or like being able to use less bits to parameterize or for the parameters and so forth. I'm not talking about any of that as far as like the technical aspects of it. What I am talking about is all of these societal aspects of it and how it's going to negatively impact people, actual people. And what matters is people, people's lives. That's more precious than just random pieces of paper or metal. So that's my perspective on it. Let me know your thoughts of what you think about some of these thoughts of mine. I think this is very common. To me, it's common sense, of at least from just perspective of what I've been witnessing and just general trends. So, for example, the fact that healthcare costs have gone up, travel costs have gone up, cars, new cars, purchasing them has gone up, insurance, car insurance, home insurance, and so forth, health insurance have gone up. These are just observations that I've been making. Part of it is because I work in the tech industry, so I get more of a view on some of these things, but seeing the fact that people's water is getting polluted, that has nothing to do with me being in tech, is just people being poisoned. That's just on the news. As I could turn it on, I could see it on my YouTube or see it being served by a data center, and that's just it's very, very open, very clear, and so it's just something that it's just simple observations to me for most of these things, I would say. So let me know your thoughts. Once again, I'm not against a sophisticated autocomplete. I think I like to use it in my day-to-day workflow, but it's just wrong to me, and I know that in the future things are going to get worse with the trajectory that we're on. and this is, once again, just from the top of my head. There's so many more things that if I took some time to further research this, and I could provide you citations, I could tell you in more detail how these are going to cause issues to kids' learning development. Actually, that's another one. Just this goes back to juniors becoming dependent on AI. There's kids that have learning, let's call it learning deficiency, as a result of dependency on these tools. There's just so many issues that can come from this. Actually, kids also, the tool, there's already been some cases where it encouraged suicide. So That's another one, probably not great. Um, and so these are just some things that are detrimental to the community. And the reason I made this is because it's obvious to me, but I'm not sure it's obvious to other people. Or maybe there's an incentive to not talk about these because it's seen as taboo. And I'm all for the technology, but doing it responsibly, doing it in a way where we don't have to harm people. So, you know, these can be eliminated if they're done appropriately. So why do we have to have water pollution? Can we safely remove the contaminants, right? Can we have engineers to be able to handle this noise pollution? Why don't we put them to try to solve these solutions? Is it because it costs money, right? Why, when things get better and less costly, do we not see those savings, but in fact we see increased in prices? So like cars, insurance, travel, why do we not see those lower costs when we should be able to see them? But instead we see management being able to get X folds or many folds of increased compensation. So there's, once again, this not to say we can't do things responsibly. We definitely can, and we can have AI done nicely, but I don't see that being the case. Now, as far as the tech is good, and if you have skills in a certain domain, it can definitely help you. But I don't support these factors, and ideally, I would hope many people just would not support these poor decisions. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope it wasn't a downer. I feel like it was a little bit of a downer, but hopefully you learned something, or you kind of had a good time being able to discuss it, or say like, yeah, I thought about that too. That makes sense. Or maybe you could tell me how you disagree and why you think some of these things are not an issue, or maybe you have a different perspective. So thank you so much. Hope you have a great night. I appreciate you watching.